come on, you guys, really? Come on. Here we go. Okay, we're up. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show. Happy 4th of July week. That's right. We're going to be talking more about where our country is as we move toward the holiday this week. But, I think this conversation is about that. We were just talking about Zoran Mandami in the last hour and the excitement that his candidacy has generated, his courage. Um, and we find ourselves in a moment in which, how many of you need a bomb? Right? Okay, I didn't think so. How many of you need bread? Well, those of you who might be carb free or low carb, you know what I mean. How many of you need the basics of life? Yeah, think about that. Well, that's connected to this discussion because this conflict with Israel and Gaza and now Iran and the United States, we're paying for it. Israel would not be able to sustain this level of aggression without us. And so now something happened with Iran. Something happened. And I don't think that we're getting the real story in Western media. Because, and I say it this way, because let's be very clear. After 12 days, there was a fighter back in the 80s who was being beaten so mercilessly, he said, no mas, no mas, no mas, no mas. I think that's what this was. Because everyone was saying that the Iron Dome is failing. But this is a country of 90 million people, Iran is. They're a little bit stronger than everyone gave them credit for being. It is always dangerous. Ronnie Patrice, Palestinian American activist, big Democrat, my dear sister beloved. Rush Darwish, Arab Americans Forward. Dr. Alia Amar, social justice advocate. It's dangerous to underestimate your combatant. Let me put it that way. It's dangerous to think that you're the smartest person in the room. Do you know what people tell you? You don't know what they know, ever. So I think that Iran was doing a little bit better in this conflict than the Western media wants to say. And plus I read international media outlets and they tell you that, they went through Israel and they were taking a lot of hits that they are used to meting out but not receiving. I'm tired of all of this fighting because you've lost more than 1,000 Iranians, about 28 or so Israelis. It just does not matter. There's too many. One life is too many.
Mhm.
Every life is precious to somebody. First of all, they're precious to God. How about that? So enough already. But let's talk about this because now the president he has said, we don't know for sure because we haven't heard anyone else talk about it. He said there's a ceasefire. A ceasefire is a formal agreement. It's a legally binding agreement that all parties involved have to agree upon and they sign papers on it. It's just like, whenever you see these pictures of FDR and Churchill and Stalin and all these European leaders, it's because they were negotiating a peace.
Mhm.
And you sign papers on that, everybody.
Mhm.
So my question is this a ceasefire or is this something that is not as strong, which is a cessation of hostilities, which is non-binding, which is really informal, which means that the door to war is still open.
Mhm.
I think we need to be honest about that. So let's get right to it. Um, and let me start with you, Ronnie, because this is also a political calculation that's being made here. Because at this time, the majority of Republicans don't want to be involved in this conflict. The overwhelming majority of Democrats don't. The majority of independents don't. Americans don't want any more of this. They're like, get me out of this.
Yeah.
And the majority of Americans really feel that the Palestinians are being treated horribly. This is the first time that has happened. And so you tell me, because this is also a political calculation, because he's calling for a ceasefire, and people are just saying, okay, it's a ceasefire. And I'm like, wait a minute, not so fast, because I'm not hearing Iran say It's a ceasefire, and a ceasefire is just that. Everybody stops shooting. That didn't happen. So, what do you make of this, Rania?
Yeah, unfortunately, it's. I'm just gonna try to summarize, but it's a game, not a fun game, not a good game, but it is a PR play to get people to stop paying attention, to get
Mhm.
people to talk about anything else. We saw
Mhm.
this happen in Gaza too, where they announced a
Mhm.
ceasefire, and there was never actually a ceasefire.
Mhm.
They were never actually adhering to the ceasefire agreements, but the average person who sees a ceasefire reported, same situation now, goes, "Oh, there's a ceasefire,
Mhm.
so we're going to move on to the next thing." Same thing. I'm going to come bring back to Gaza, to the delivery of aid. This GHF scam, the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, it's a scam. It is a US Israel scam.
What do you mean? I mean,
They're
because
getting
it's
people
very interesting that everybody who
so
goes to get their food, they get shot and killed. I mean, is that just me? Is that what's happening?
exactly. Well, and now, and there's also a report. I think it was yesterday. There was a story in Harrods, which is an Israeli outlet,
Yeah.
with firsthand accounts from Israeli soldiers saying this was the directive: shoot people, shoot unarmed people waiting to get food, who have been starved to death,
Mhm.
intentionally starved, that are being starved to death. So, but all of this to say, it's all part of the same sort of PR play to get people to move on and talk about anything else. The other thing I will say too, that I think is a piece of this puzzle, this very twisted, messed up puzzle, is Donald Trump's obsession with a Nobel Prize. The obsession that he has with a Nobel Prize, and the things that he thinks he's going to do in order to win that prize. And this is one of the things he thinks: normalizing relations with Saudi Arabia is going to be one of those things. Oh, um, so all of these games that are being played out in public to again get people to just move on. It's been an ongoing thing. The media, the administration, and let's be real honest, it didn't start with Donald Trump.
Oh, yeah.
Joe Biden was desperate for the same thing too. Talk about anything else. Talk about anything else, not that. So we're going to create these distractions. We're going to put, false information out there. We're going to stretch the truth. We're going to do all these things in an effort to misdirect, frankly, to misdirect and get people to believe something that's not true and to move on, to turn the page, talk about anything else. And
But
I think that's what we're seeing here. I
but you know what? See, the
Uh-oh.
Dr. Amar, people are getting killed every day. You put out the call, as Ronnie Patrice pointed out. Okay, the food is here, the truck is over there. There are directives because it's clear people are getting shot and killed every day. What
Yeah.
what is going on here? And so a
Mhm.
cessation. I mean, because and that's Gaza, and in the meantime, you got the United States, which has joined in on the bombing of Iran.
Mhm.
They threatened to shut down the Strait of Hormuz. That's
Mhm.
20% plus of the world oil product that would come through.
Right.
I mean, there's just, I,
But the
I
question you've
suppose
asked is what's going on, and
what
what's
is going
going
on?
on.
Because there are lots of levels of gamesmanship here, I think.
Well, it's not just the gamesmanship. You have to look beyond Gaza to what's been going on with Palestine since the Nakba. You have to look at the intentional um, willingness to ignore international law consistently when Israel is in play, and this unmitigated support that the United States has given to them. We've given them support for decades with no strings attached and no accountability. And so now we've gotten to the point where, because our government is unwilling to take a moral position, even when it comes to shooting starving children. In 2014, it was shooting children on a beach. In 2023, it was let's slaughter and displace 2.2 million people out of Gaza because of the actions of a few. And those actions didn't come out of nowhere. I don't agree with the contention that we start everything on an artificial date that doesn't allow us to consider the continuity of horrors that have been met upon the Palestinian people for decades. And to constantly call it an interplay and take one side and not ever hold them accountable to international law, that's what we're seeing. And so now Israel is on a bent to have its greater Israel plan play out, to move into more and more countries. You've seen that with Jordan, you've seen that with Syria. You are seeing Qatar being pulled more and more into this. And they attacked Iran, and 2 days later, the United States acted as if Iran had attacked Israel. So
But see,
let's
you know
stop
what?
playing games with international law. It either matters or it doesn't matter. And with this president and all the ones before him, it has not mattered when it comes to Palestine.
But you know what, Rush? Iran is a different kettle of fish because we've got a burr in our saddle about them because they dared to take us on in 1979. Now, after we overthrew their democratically elected government, President Mossadegh,
Mhm.
um, they had had enough, and they overtook the embassy, the U.S. embassy, and they would not let those people go for a year. Now, I've shared this story before. My mother was visiting with Chairman Arafat in Lebanon at that time. He spoke with Ayatollah Khomeini, and as because of their respect for Reverend as a freedom fighter, and because they knew of the hits that he was taking on Palestinians, they said if she comes to Tehran, Mrs. Jackson and her group of women, God bless you, uh, we will release all of the hostages to her, which would have been a big smush in the face to the Western governments. President Carter was calling my father, frightening him to death, because my father was accustomed to taking risks, quite frankly. My mother taking the risks, he couldn't even wrap his mind. I mean, he's a husband. He could not wrap his mind around that. He said, no, 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 you got to come home. So the compromise was they let the blacks and the women go. That's what that was about. So we have, and they are 10 toes down, standing with the Palestinians. The other Arab governments are compromised, quite frankly. That's part of the reason they're still in this mess because
Yep.
they've all bought in. I mean, Jared Kushner's uh, the people who helped to bomb Gaza, they're partnered with the Saudis. I mean, it's like what? I mean, look, I get it. I just think it's a horrible thing. So, I mean, when I look at, I mean, I think that going up against Iran, I don't think that America calculated that they were time enough for them because I think that's what happened, Rush.
I think you're absolutely right. I think we have a situation here where Israel calculated by what they perceived as a defeat to Hezbollah. They calculated that Russia is very weak because they're no longer supplying weapons to Hezbollah and are lacking military strength due to their war in Ukraine. And we all know that the other Middle Eastern countries like Jordan, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, to name a few, are in America's pocket and Israel's pocket. And the
Mm-hmm.
way Prime Minister Netanyahu looked at this was it is now or never. We've got Iran at their knees. Let's get them now. And sure enough, they went ahead with what was considered a large scale attack the first 3 days. Major generals taken out, according to media reports, of course, the Western media, major targets taken out. But here was the problem is that Israel is soft. And I mean that they may have all the military might and money and influence here in the United States, but they're soft because Iran was able to strike back and they hit a lot of targets. They hit a lot of buildings. They killed people. And more importantly, people went running for their lives. People went in bunkers. Other people, they fled. And For Iran or Palestine, this is a very resilient civilization that will fight to the bitter end. And what we learned from Israel is you just have to tap them and they will roll. And immediately when the targets were hitting, panic ensued. And I think, yes, America did come in, but I think the assessment was, holy crap, we were not expecting this. We were not expecting the Iron Dome to fail. We were not expecting for the weapons, for the missiles to hit all these targets. And a ceasefire had to happen. I believe that the United States and, of course, Israel came in with the idea that we are going to destroy Iran and we're going to get the Ayatollah to wave the white flag, or we're going to kill the Ayatollah, but we are going to destroy Iran. And that did not happen. They had to settle for a ceasefire in Iran, just like very soon they're going to have to eventually settle for a ceasefire with Hamas in Gaza, because you cannot defeat resiliency. And I think that's what's happening right now. And Israel is learning the hard way.
Well, Ariel, what do you make of this? Because bless your heart.
I have to politically, as an analysis, I have to disagree. So first of all, I was there in Israel, Palestine. I was in East Jerusalem when the missiles started coming in, when Israel struck and the missiles started coming in from Iran. And talk about resiliency as well. Most people actually didn't go into bomb shelters. And the Israeli people, just like the Iranian people, rallied around that militarism, and it boosted Netanyahu's ratings. And I don't think he wanted to stop. Believe me, I wanted to stop. It's difficult to get out of there. I did run and say
wait a minute, Ariel. You're cutting in and out.
But
Ariel, wait a minute. You were cutting in and out. Okay.
Bit. Yeah.
No. Now you're back. Now you're back. You was okay. Start again.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, look. Yeah. So yeah, I did run and get out and wanted out and all of that. But I don't think Netanyahu did want to stop. So, like, listening to Israeli messaging while I was there, I certainly wanted it to stop, not get started, et cetera, et cetera. But, you know, Ben Gvir, it was not easy for Netanyahu to pull out. And I think it was Trump who, I think Israel would have just kept going. And a lot of the people that got hit, I mean, the biggest hits were the Palestinian citizens in Israel. The whole entire city got that. And they have police bomb shelters, of course, because it's, you know, a racist apartheid situation there. Certainly Israel doesn't care about that. And Israel has shown in this war with Gaza, they don't care about the lives of Israeli soldiers and how many Israelis get killed. We saw that with October 7th. But for whatever reason, Trump's, you know, playing his sides of strong man versus, you know, I'm going to be the anti-war president. It's going to be quick and fast. And, you know, I think he demanded Netanyahu stop the war, and I do not think Netanyahu wanted it. In fact, Netanyahu then had to make concessions to Ben Gvir and those folks saying, like, well, don't worry, we had to stop that, but we'll just double the death toll in Gaza, essentially. So, I mean, I'm a peacenik. I oppose all strikes on civilians, and you know, I don't think anybody won this, and I don't think anybody does win this. And, you know, I think we just have to go about this such a different way. We have got to be talking diplomacy rather than winners or losers. We have got to be talking about how to pull our money out of the military so that these things cannot start in the first place. And, you know, so we need an arms embargo on Israel, so this whole thing cannot get going from the beginning. Because yeah, I don't think it's resiliency that you can't destroy, but I think it's hatred and pain that you can't destroy. And you know, Hamas by name can be destroyed, but then you're going to get ISIS 2.0 because it's with every child you kill, you birth new hatred. And I don't think that's about Hamas being resilient, or even, you know, I think that's just what war does. Okay. Anyway, there's my peacenik piece.
No. I mean, but that's why look, everybody's is operating from their own world perspective, and that's why we're all here, because we can agree, disagree. What we can help people to understand as we have this conversation is that, number one, we're all going to walk away being friends and sisters and brothers beloved. Okay? Nobody, look, I'm from a family of 7 people. Trust and believe, and I've known you since high school, Dr. Amar. You know, we do not agree on everything all the time. Oh, but we love each other even when we're fighting. And we're not fighting each other as much as we're fighting for the position, but that's something that our parents helped us to understand that we had to do. Because I think, respectfully, Ariel, I think it is resilience. Because you have
Mhm.
people who are getting killed and who just keep on pushing back. I mean, they have something for them. And I think that Iran did do more damage than Israel ever thought. And this is not about a win-lose. This is about hubris.
Mhm.
When you are the biggest, baddest military in the region, you think that nobody is bigger and better than you and badder than you. And I think something else happened here.
But
Especially
you're
So
only the
Santita,
biggest and
I
the
want to
baddest
add that,
because the
yeah,
United States keeps sending
absolutely.
weapons and sending money. If Biden hadn't continued to drop in funds and support, you know, it's one of the reasons
Yeah.
that this election went the way that it went. You had so many people who have seen that, yes, there's an apartheid in Israel. Yeah, first of all, you can't have an apartheid road and not have an apartheid, right? So the Israelis have a road that Palestinians aren't even allowed to drive on. Palestinians and Israelis have to have
it's
two
multiple
separate
roads,
license
Dr.
plates.
Alia.
It is multiple, but I mean,
Multiple
remember
roads. Yeah.
when they made the first one, the highway that they made a few years ago, and then people were saying, "Oh, there's not an apartheid," and somebody from the Knesset went on and said, "Oh, we just finished apartheid road." And so one of the things I like to say is, go ahead. You can't have an apartheid road and not have an apartheid. So if you want to have a member of your government call it apartheid road, then you better believe that we're going to call it an apartheid. And the people who are living under that, just like all other oppressed people in the world, are willing to continue to fight to the end for their dignity. Is you know, Palestine and Israel. Um, this was a multicultural region, multiple religions, multiple cultures. And over the past 80 years, you've seen a more concerted effort to rewrite the story as if it's the story of only one people.
But
But the
hold on
people
out.
who came don't have stories in that land.
But
So
Dr.
that's
Amar,
why the resilience is there. Sorry.
but no,
Mhm,
no, 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 don't apologize. But what I want to do, I want to arc this to Iran because
mhm,
part of the reason that Iran takes so many hits is because they unlike the other Arab states are uncompromisingly
mhm,
allied with the Palestinians like North Korea is. No one even talks about that.
mhm,
And so I want to look at what happened here because America is now actively they have joined in with Israel on attacking Iran.
mhm,
And that to me is extremely dangerous. They signed a strategic partnership with Russia last January. They are now
mhm,
a BRICS nation. When you are attacking a whole lot of people when you get engaged with Iran. I
mhm.
mean, and I think that I think Americans really have to understand that because they don't understand all of these relationships that are out here. I mean, because it's just like playing Jenga.
Mhm.
When you move a stick, you keep on moving these sticks. In a minute, you're like, wait, 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 wait. If I dislodge the wrong one, this whole building is collapse. And I mean, it's not ignoring Gaza and the West Bank. No, I'm
Mhm.
saying too few Americans know enough. They don't. Number one, they've now shifted from Gaza, which is
Mhm.
shameful.
Mhm.
But they don't know enough about Iran. They really do not. They don't know the bear
No.
that they don't know the bear that we've been poking.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm of the mind with Ariel, ain't nobody winning here. What did my
Right.
father say? An eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth leaves everybody blind and toothless. You can't eat anything and you can't see anything. I mean, what you gonna do? Eat Gerbers?
Mhm.
This is not what are we doing
But
here?
Santita, I think you're kind of circling around the exact point, and it's all connected, all of
Mhm.
it, and
Mhm.
it's exactly what Dr. Amar was talking about. The blank checks with no strings attached,
Mhm.
the ignoring of international humanitarian law, not to mention US law.
Mhm.
This is not an October 2023 thing. This is nearly
No.
80 years,
Yeah.
nearly 80 years of this. And I have to tell, I
And
tell
the
the story
Nakba
often.
never ended. The Nakba never ended.
No,
Yeah.
no,
Period.
but to Dr. Ahmad's
And
other
mhm.
point about the multicultural, multi-religion, my grandmother used to tell, which it used to be like, ew, because I was a little kid and I didn't know any better. But my grandmother
Mhm.
used to tell me stories about pre-Nakba, how she and
Mhm.
her Jewish neighbor would breastfeed each other's kids. You
Mhm.
can't get any closer than that. You
Mm.
Yeah.
cannot get any more intimate or closer than that. And
Yeah.
this was the reality. And understanding that it's all part of this, it's all rooted in the same
Absolutely.
thing. And I do want to say, I
Mhm.
just want to say one thing that I think is really, really important, of all these Arab nations. All, I mean, you could put Morocco in there, you could
Yes.
put, you put the UAE in there, you put all these different places in there. I just think it's so massively important, and I have to remind myself of this almost daily, of separating the people from their governments, because I
Absolutely.
spend a
Yes.
lot of time in these countries
Yes.
and the people are so wildly with us. They
Hmm.
are
Mhm.
so with us. And and I mean, we see things about our own government too, like the people
Right.
versus the governments rarely are a direct representation of the people, right? And
Mhm.
so I just want to name that, because there's so much allyship, there's so much
Yeah.
fight
Yes.
happening, on behalf of humanity, whether
Yeah.
it's Palestinian people or Iranian people. I just wanted to say that out
No,
loud.
but that's why that
That's
but
why
no go
Israel's
but that
position
goes
is so
to
great.
my point,
Mhm.
because you have an absolute disconnect between the people and their governments.
Mhm.
In the United States,
Mhm.
increasingly that is so. And when we
Mhm.
got this big beautiful bill, we're really going to see it.
Mhm.
But you're seeing that. I think that's why I'm saying getting into the internals of
Exactly.
what is going on over there. But that's why now you're bringing in, now Iran is in it, because Iran was always the crown jewel in this thing. Because if they could
Mhm.
collapse Iran, they were on the road to the Greater Israel Project, and that has been the linchpin. That's why I was saying
Mhm.
Iran is a different kettle of fish. And that's why I want us
Mhm.
to look at that, because Americans need to know what they are looking at. Because when you decide to get engaged with Iran, we look at everybody as some little inferior country,
Mhm.
unfortunately, because many of us
Yeah.
don't travel, we don't know. This is a country of 90 million people that is thousands
Mhm.
of years old,
Mhm.
who
Yes.
have their pride, who are very powerful, everybody.
Mhm. Who
You
had an empire
so
for longer than the United States has even existed. The Persian Empire ruled large
thank you.
swaths of the world. So, we have a saying: we
Oh,
plan and God plans, and God is the best of all planners. And I think that sometimes when you see things as they're unfolding here, um, human beings, I think, are a bit slow, and we learn from experience directly better than we learn from our collective knowledge. And so sometimes when we're in pain, we begin to do what we should have done long before we were in pain. We should have come together long before this.
mm-hmm.
I've I've been linking the Palestinian cause and the African American cause for as long as I can, because we're people with very similar stories of oppression. But when we see each other differently, when we allow the kind of division that this administration is particularly good at manipulating, when we see each other as enemies, then we fail to realize where our allies are. When I see Ariel, I see my sister who keeps fighting for the side of good. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and when I see Rush, I see my brother. When I see Rania, I see my sister that I need to know better. When we see each other and see each other's struggles and realize that we're fighting against the same boot, then that's when the change really happens. And what you see in Iran is a people who, despite international sanctions and blockades destroying that society, it has strengthened them in many ways and allowed them to pick up allies For instance, Russia, Vladimir Putin said last week that he's dedicated to making sure that Iran gets a nuclear weapon. Now, I'm not a nuclear proliferations person. I join people who are more on the peacenik side of the table. But it sounds like people all over the world are beginning to realize some of the dangers of having what is increasingly an unreliable ally that disrespects international law. And they're beginning to look at how their common interests might help them fight an empire.
Well, I mean, so the question is now, where do we go from here? Because
Well,
because I don't know ceasefire, cessation of hostilities. I don't know what this is, and I can't trust what our government is telling us. Nobody can, and you've got more than 40,000 troops who are in the immediate area,
Mhm,
U.S. troops,
mhm,
and not that other troops don't matter, but I mean, this is this is not good, Rush.
mhm,
Th- this is, and I think this resonates far more widely, far more
mhm,
deeply than many of us even know.
I
mhm,
think we have to look at a lot of different angles, and I'm going to look at what I call the immediate problem that we now have that people are not really looking at. Santita, of course, we have what's happening in Palestine and Gaza. We know what's happening in Iran. I think we need to start paying attention to Syria.
Mm.
Syria used to be an ally to Iran. Iran was a funder to Bashar al-Assad. Well, he is gone, and now there's a new regime that is forming, and all signs point that this regime is going to cooperate with the United States. They're going to
mhm,
cooperate with Israel. Recently, sanctions have been lifted from Syria thanks to the Trump administration. Matter of fact, people right here from Chicago met with Senator Lindsey Graham, and it really pissed off a lot of people here in Chicago because they're overlooking the Palestinian crisis. They're not standing. Dr. Ali has said we have to stand together, but this is also causing a wedge. And I think one of the major problems, Santita, we are going to face is that a Syria that is going to be kind of owned or operated by America and the Israeli government, if they're able to put their surveillance, if they're able to control airspace, if they're able to have the same presence they have in Iraq, look out. This is going to be a huge problem for Iran, and it's going to be another piece of the puzzle for the United States and Israel to add a piece to what we call that puzzle of wanting to conquer the Middle East. I'm very concerned about that, and I think we all should because the writing is in the wall, and I hope it changes, but it's not looking like that right now.
Yeah, I mean, and again, what concerns me is that I don't know if Americans really understand all of the players here and these relationships, you know, and that is what's unsettling to me. That we do not know. The thing is, Ariel, Rania, Rush, Dr. Omar, it is dangerous to think that you're the smartest person in the room. It's dangerous to think that you're the strongest person in the room. It's dangerous to underestimate your combatant. It's just dangerous. And we're poking all these bears. Most Americans cannot join the armed services because we're not physically fit enough. Beyond the fact that Americans also don't have the appetite for this. So socially, that's a problem. In terms of our health, that we got a problem. This is, and no one, you got to talk about that. We're not doing that. And that for me is just, that's extremely, extremely dangerous. What we're doing here, this is very, very dangerous, very dangerous. And I'm just wondering, just what is the path forward? Because again, is this a ceasefire or is it a cessation of hostilities? What are we looking at? Because I mean, look, they started dropping bombs on Iran overnight. I don't know what's next. What?
I'm in the space of cessation. I know you're raising the question again and again, so
Yeah,
Let's poll it. Let's poll it. I'm in the space of thinking that this is a cessation of hostilities and not a
not
real
ceasefire.
ceasefire.
Well,
I've never in my lifetime known um, I've never in my lifetime seen a ceasefire steadily hold when one party does not believe that they actually have to adhere to it.
Rush, what do you think this is? Ceasefire or cessation of
Yeah,
hostility?
I think this is definitely a clear situation where Israel officially sees Iran as a threat. I think uh, President Trump, to what Ariel said, realized that damage has been inflicted on Israel. That makes Israel look bad. It makes the United States look bad. The Iron Dome is failing. It's a PR nightmare that was ensuing. And yes, obviously, if it's up to Benjamin Netanyahu, he wants to wake up every morning and kill, 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 murder, murder, murder. We fully are aware that is his intention. However, the way I see this, Santita, is I think that the United States and Israel will continue to find ways to maneuver, but not every move is based on just missiles. I think they will look at other ways to sanction and other ways to continue to disrupt and destroy Iran slowly but surely.
Okay, Ariel, what do you think? Oh, do you know what? I'll unmute you. There we go.
Okay, I got it. Sorry about that. I was staying muted for the train. So, yeah, we got our work cut out for us. Just like we got our work cut out for us in this New York City mayor election. And this work cut out for us is we know, look, I'll be honest, I'm no fan of the country of Iran. I spent time there myself as well, and I'm no fan of them. And we're not going to bring about change in the ways that I would love to see in Iran, more rights for women, for the Baha'i people, etc., by bombing things or by sanctioning people. And the best we can do is support people, and the way you support civil society is by allowing a country to flourish, right? By removing those sanctions. Before those sanctions were placed on Iran, when Trump first ripped us out of the Iran nuclear deal, women's rights groups, environmental rights groups, and human rights groups were flourishing much, much more than when those sanctions came back on, and we saw repression throughout civil society. We saw, suffering such that people didn't have, such that those groups had to work on basic human needs like food as well, and couldn't work on civil society reform in the ways that we want to see. So we need to leave Iran alone, leave them alone, and let their civil society do their thing to make their community a better place for them. And we need to do what's our business, which is the fact that we keep dumping mountains of weapons into Israel so that they can hit people in Gaza. I don't want to talk about what's going on in the West Bank, because settlers are just rampant shooting people, and a lot of those are U.S. guns as well. We exported our own gun violence epidemic over there, and starting a war with Iran, which endangers the whole entire world, including the Israeli people who died from the Iranian retaliation. So we got our work cut out for us, and it's called arms embargo. We know how to, friends don't let friends drive drunk, and friends don't let friends shoot off bombs like crazy. So let's stop arming that country, whether it's because we care about the Palestinians or we care about the people of Israel, because there's some good people there. There's some good, amazing friends there, conscientious objectors who, just trying to stand on a damn street corner with a sign that says ceasefire. So let's empower them by arms embargo.
Do you get the sense that many Israelis want now an arms embargo, or before I get to you, Rania, or are people rallying around the flag?
They're rallying around the flag. That's usually
Okay.
what happens with violence. And in a society that has that degree of conscription, and in a society that has moved so far to the right in recent years, that said, there is a dedicated, very small, but very dedicated, and they're not even looking to try to leave the country. They're like, go down with the ship mentality. They're the first day that people could get out of the bomb shelters enough. I was in Jerusalem So I didn't make it up to Tel Aviv for that protest, but conscientious objectors were out on the street corners in Tel Aviv calling for a ceasefire in Gaza and in Iran, and they were swiped off the street pretty quickly and thrown into a jail. And proud to say my organization helped donate the money to the European human rights defender organization that bailed them out so they could get back out there the next day. And there are some really dedicated people, and God bless them, because they are a lonely bunch. But if there's going to be hope, and these are my people, so I really care about our pension, what happens to us in the future. And they, for me, are the hope of our people, like working for change from the inside. And that has got to be through disarmament of mindset and militarism. That's the only way forward for the Jewish people. So God bless, those who are
So do you think this is a
keeping that
cessation?
hope alive.
So do you think, well, no, there's that, but do you think this is a cessation or a real ceasefire?
I certainly don't think it's a real ceasefire. I think the question is, how long is it a cessation? And there's no cessation in Gaza, and there's no cessation in the West Bank. And Israel's definition of ceasefire is we ceasefire when we feel like it, and when we don't, whether it's Lebanon or Syria, or when there hasn't been an official Gaza war, we still drop bombs when we feel like it. So, I think it's up to Trump. And I don't know what he wants. He's his own creature. Do I think Israel wanted to stop? No. I think this was American forced, and may continue to be forced. And may we, see any day with less bombs is a better day than a day with more bombs.
I think the American people are going to have to.
I wanted to get to Rania because I
Oh,
didn't
go ahead.
hear ceasefire,
Sorry.
cessation. No, it's okay. Rania, ceasefire, cessation of hostilities.
I think there's some things we have to keep in mind. One is that Israel has been trying to pull the U.S. into a war with Iran for years, specifically Netanyahu too, but more broadly, decades.
Yeah.
Two, Netanyahu, he's a vile, horrible human being, as are his cabinet members, and it's they're so far right and sexist and anti-LGBTQ and anti everything under the sun. But the thing that also we always have to keep in mind is that Netanyahu's trying to stay out of jail, and like this intense desperation to keep bombing, and like they flattened Gaza. I mean, there's like nothing left, but we're gonna just keep at it. And now like the West Bank, and then we go to there's Iran, there's all Lebanon still. All these things are going on. And if we don't understand that it is in large part, him keeping himself out of jail and continue. I mean, we've seen it over and over where he's supposed to appear in court and he manufactures a crisis that he has to deal with so he doesn't have to appear in court over and over and over again. This has happened. And let's be clear, the proverbial allow it. And again, not just now, not just this administration, not just the last administration, for nearly 80 years, this has been going on with no consequences, with nothing.
Yeah.
One other thing I just want to keep in mind too, as we're talking about the Israeli people, and I don't mean Israeli Palestinians, I mean Israeli people. It's state-run media in Israel. That's what they're fed day in and day out and day in and day out. They're told there's no forced starvation happening. There's no genocide happening. I'm not saying it doesn't excuse people to me. We have similar terrible media, obviously present company very much excluded in our country, but the mainstream media is abhorrent, as we know. And so they're being fed that constantly. So I'm asking us to keep that back of mind too. All of that being said, as I wax poetic, I apologize. This is nowhere near a ceasefire. This is not, even if they said it was a ceasefire, it is performative, continuous BS to get people to think something that's not really happening. It is To me, very likely a temporary cessation. I mean, we saw Trump, was it yesterday or Friday? We saw Trump say, "Oh, if Israel doesn't keep going after Netanyahu, I'm gonna withhold funding." You know, about his criminal proceedings. Like that's what's going to get him to withhold funding, are criminal proceedings. And to me, this is a theory. It's based in nothing. I don't have friends in the Trump administration, so I don't know for sure. But my theory is that he does actually want this to stop. He said it. He's getting a lot of crap from his own base about, you said you were going to be the peace president. You said you were going to stop the wars. You're not doing it, brother. And so I think that that is like a little game that they're playing, like, oh, okay, if I could just keep this guy out of jail, then maybe he'll just back off, and knock it off. I don't believe that. I don't trust it. But I think, even my long story short, even if they called it a ceasefire, it's not a ceasefire. It's a temporary cessation, and it's all in service of himself, frankly. And let me be very clear. I'm sorry I have to say this, but there are a lot of people who want to make this a Netanyahu thing. He is vile. We all know this. Let's be clear. Even when you get rid of Netanyahu, the idea of going back to what it was before is still apartheid. It's still ethnic cleansing. It's still gross abuses of human rights. That does not leave when Netanyahu is out the door.
Right.
And it didn't start with him either. And I'm going to stop. Apologies for so much.
No, look, I want, look, excuse me, these perspectives people are not hearing. And certainly, we don't hear Ariel, Rania, Dr. Amar, Rush, Jarwish. We don't hear you all on the same, talking at the same time, on the same panel. And we need that. And everybody, everybody's got a perspective. When I talked to Ariel a couple of weeks ago, she was in a bomb shelter. My nerves were fried. Like, girl, if you don't get out of there, how are you getting out of here? Like, what? Yeah, I said it. And you know that. And you know what my mother told you to do. She said, girl, you need a drink and you need to get out. Like, immediately. The question was, how could she get out? Because the government was allowing people to fly in, but they were not letting them fly out. I mean, and you just remarked casually, Ariel, you said, yeah, we're cannon fodder. I'm like, this is horrible. What are these people doing? And you know what? And we all are, because you have people who just toss around, oh, well, we might have a nuclear war. Do you know what nuclear war means? You have a nuclear blast in one part of the world, the whole world takes a hit. A lot of people are going to die. You know that better than anyone, Dr. Amar. That toxic cloud permeates the whole globe.
But I want to add something here, which is, I think the American people fail to realize sometimes, and I can't speak for all of them, but geographically, a little bit of what we're talking about. Rania made a great point about the amount of money and the funding that has been going out for at least the last 80 years. We all know that this has been since before the Balfour Agreement of the 1800s. And so you have this rather consistent movement for a long time that then seized upon events in history that we began to count the clock differently from. But just to put it in context and to go right ahead with that timeline, even though that timeline should be disputed, from 1951 until now, the United States of America has given Israel $317 billion. And I don't think that the $317 billion has even been converted over time. I think that's just an addition of the amounts, and it hasn't been adjusted for the time period. Israel and Palestine are 20 times smaller than California. 20 times smaller than California. When we think of the way in which the media and the movies and the rhetoric has been used to manipulate us into seeing this small and very often violent government try to take hold of the cultures and the peoples all around it. Um, Independent nations, independent people that we have funded, 20 times smaller than California, 300 plus $1 million. And yet, and yet today, as the Senate was, looking at this big bill, and I won't say what I think the other B should stand for in the bill, but as they were looking at this, I want to point out to people one thing. They are putting caps on the amount of money that Americans can borrow to send their own children to college. Low caps, like not going to get you through 2 to 3 years of college, caps on how much you can borrow to send your children to college. If Trump or anybody else wants to put their money where their mouth is and put their money back into investing in the American people and into our society, fine. But to send a country that is 20 times smaller than California more money than you would ever send California is egregious.
Of course it is, but this is about resources. I mean, this is what all this is. This is about. I mean, because they could have put Israel anywhere.
Mhm.
I mean, this is, and let us not leave Great Britain out of this because they're all up in this. And it's these
Yep.
Western powers, and France is too.
Mhm.
It's about the resources. We keep
Mhm.
making this is not a religious war. No, it's not. This is a
It
political.
is not.
It's like Jesus was killed on politics. Everybody, the state killed him. Okay,
Mhm.
Mhm.
with the cooperation of the church. That's just the
Mhm.
reality. That's what we do. Dr. King couldn't get in a pulpit. Most black pulpits were closed to him when he was killed. Okay,
Mhm.
so everybody just stop.
Mhm.
I mean, the people who, I mean, the rabbis were sick of Jesus from jump. He was getting them straight at 12. They were like, "Who is this kid? What? This little prodigy? Who is this little snot nosed kid? Where are his
Mhm.
parents?"
Mhm.
Then Mary and Joseph found him. And they're like, "Boy, get over here! I told you not to leave me. What are you doing?" Okay. I mean, this is about politics. This is resources. So everybody stop. That's what this is.
Mhm.
And if we don't, and don't just put just the United States in it. The
Mhm.
UK's in it. France is in it. All these
Oh
people
yeah. Oh
who
yeah.
get all of these resources, they're in it. And what Iran told you was that no, you cannot just take my stuff.
Right.
And wait a minute. Oh, oops, wait a minute. We didn't mean to give you Gaza because we didn't know that there was that much oil and so many resources there. So we got to kind
Mhm.
of move you off of that. That's what this is.
Mhm.
And people need to stop that and understand what this fight is really about. And we need to stop taking everybody else's stuff. Grow up in your politics. You can't have my stuff. I'm
Yeah.
not supposed to come home. I wish I would come home and find somebody else living here. Are you kidding me? And we do it all over the world
Yeah.
all the time, and it's just got to stop.
Yeah.
But everybody, literally, I have a minute for everyone, and I do mean a minute. And when you hear my voice, it means I got to go. You got to give me something. Rush understands this. I don't need to edit all night long. I got to go see my daddy. How about we get closing thoughts? Let me start off with Rania, who's on a train. We're not going to throw Mama from the train, but I'm so glad that you made time for us today. She said, "Oh no, I'll be there, but thank you." Because I think, let me just thank all of you, because to have this conversation, this kind of conversation, where we can agree, we can disagree. Everybody's got a different perspective. We've got to talk with each other because we're all brothers and sisters here. We are well, brother and sisters. We love you, Rush, but you know what I mean. And so, Ron, Ariel, let me start with you. I'll go around this way, or maybe your closing thought, Ariel. What do we need to use? Because you continue bang the drum on embargo, on arms embargoes. Why?
I'll be a little more specific, and and I should say realistic here. Let's condition weapons. Let's listen to what Bernie Sanders says and has been pushing for. It's more realistic. We want to win, right? We want to win, not just say the best thing. So no offensive weapons. Let's go with that. Israel wants to shoot down missiles. Great, shoot down missiles, but you don't get to shoot them off at other places. Um, let's condition weapons in accordance with the Leahy Act. Let's abide by U.S. laws. Let's and I also say this, arms embargo. Want to pull our money out of these damn weapons companies. I am sick of paying for Lockheed Martin and Boeing and their welfare checks. Please, I want welfare for poor people.
That's
So,
right.
this is, we talk often about how this is a fight to reform countries or a fight against Trump, but as much as any of that, this is us up against the weapons, the merchants of death.
Yeah.
And they are really who keeps these wars going. And I imagine there'll be analysis coming out if we look really at who decides what, when, and where, what role that really plays. We still got the Ukraine war going, and Lockheed Martin's still making a bundle and a half out of that. They are certainly, I can't remember the numbers, but I saw it recently how much how much the Iran war, never mind the war in Gaza that's been going on, costed the Israeli people. And it was a god awful, shocking number. And I saw plenty of homeless people on the streets of Tel Aviv as well. So let's stop these warmongers. Let's stop paying their welfare checks, and let's start giving out welfare checks to the people in need, the people.
Okay. Well, I'm going to zigzag. Dr. Amar?
You know, it all comes down at the end of the day to the people. We have a large fight on our hands in the United States just to hold on to what we had, as imperfect as it may have been. But this is not the time to try to hold on to the past, neither here nor there. This is the time to really reconceptualize, to radically reconceptualize what we want to see in the world. Do we want to be people who live at peace together truly? And like Ariel said, without peace just being a pause in the use of weaponry until everyone has bought enough for them to need to use it. Um, so, what do we want in this world? And how are we going to get there despite what empire wants from us? Dr. and Pastor Otis Moss gave a beautiful sermon when I was in Palestine and Israel in 2023. And he was joined by Palestinian uh, priests at the time. And it was a beautiful sermon because what it really focused on was, does empire meet the needs of anyone? And it doesn't. This struggle that you've talked about, Santita, when it all comes down to money, it all comes down to power, it all comes down to politics. When does it just all come down to us? Because Ariel was in a bomb shelter not too long ago. I was in a bomb shelter not too long ago. Russian Rania, I bet you run from some missiles and things yourself at some point. And so when you're doing that, you don't really care who you're running next to for a minute. You just hope that nothing hits anyone near you, you or anyone near you. And you hope that you make it out because all of a sudden it's just your humanity. And maybe that's what it needs to be. It's just our humanity without the BS that gets pushed to us by people who don't have interest in really helping the average everyday person at all.
No skin in the game. Ronnie Patrice?
Yeah, I want to just actually piggyback off of something Dr. Amar said a little bit ago, and and we talked about a little bit the interconnectedness. And I talk about this often, and I know Santita, you've heard me talk about it. I believe deeply that the cornerstone of white supremacy and colonialism and all of it is to divide us, is to make
Mhm,
us each other's enemies, is
mhm,
to make us feel my liberation means your liberation is not possible.
mhm,
And we're fighting in that scarcity mentality that we've been conditioned to believe in. That's what we've been taught, and it's intentional. They want us fighting each other, even though, just like Dr. Amar said, our struggles are so interconnected. So as are our struggles with indigenous people, as they are with the Latino and Hispanic communities, as are they with so many other communities, we are we are brothers and sisters and siblings in this, and not each other's enemies. And my God, if we actually did come together, if we really, really, all of us, all of our communities really came together and locked arms, there's nothing we can't do, which is why they intentionally try to keep us divided, is so that we don't do that. And so if anybody is listening to anything I'm saying, I beg that you find your sibling in the struggle outside of your own community. I mean, we are all attached to our communities. Of course we are. Of course we are. But find your sibling in another community and fight alongside them, because my God, that is so powerful. It's so
Amen.
powerful.
Rush Darwish, you're the only man on the panel. Had to
Here
give him
we
the
go.
final word,
Well,
ladies.
I will say this: we have to pay attention to Iran. We need to pay attention to the various proxy wars that are happening in the Middle East. But I got 4 words for you: all eyes on Gaza. When it's all said and done, I'm with all of my sisters. We must talk about the future and how we can unite and work together. But right now, we have a historic genocide that is happening. We have people that are lining up for food, and as mentioned, it's a booby trap, and they're being shot at. And more importantly, we have now millions of people on the streets that are recognizing the crisis in Palestine. They are recognizing the brutal regime of the Israeli Defense Forces. And the time is now to continue that work, because what will happen is, yes, we care about what's happening in Iran and peace across the Middle East, but the reality is we don't have the bandwidth to put our heart and energy and effort into every single problem. We got one giant problem. And if you really want peace in the Middle East, you must solve this horrific, almost 80-year crisis that is happening in Palestine. There cannot be peace in the Middle East unless you have equal rights in Palestine. There cannot be peace in the Middle East unless there is land that Palestinians can truly call home. And more importantly, and this is for Israel, if there's that one strong pro-Israeli that is out there, if you are to continue at least to have your land and to continue to have your state, the people of Israel will be happier. They will be much more in peace. There will not be sirens that will be needed or shelters that are needed if you have a peaceful Palestinian region that is run by Palestine, that is governed by Palestine. That is the key to peace in the Middle East. All right here on the Santita Jackson Show.
Well, I'll tell you this. So someone sent me a video of my father from 1979. He and my mother had been in Lebanon with Chairman Arafat earlier that year, but they went back in the fall. And they met with Mayor Khalek. Remember him? Teddy Khalek, the mayor of Tel Aviv. And it was just very interesting to see my parents, because my parents were not yet 40. I think my mother was 35, my father was 38. They were kids. But they said something then that is still true today. Israeli security is married to Palestinian justice. You can't have one without the other. The Bible tells us that we will all have a will all have a seat at the table in the presence of our enemies. Because you know what? Your enemy is God's child too. So we're really all brothers and sisters here. You might have a community that's given you a set of experiences, and God bless you. I think it's great. I'm Baptist. I'm just glad God is not. I'm glad God is not Jewish. I'm glad God is not Muslim. I'm glad God is God. And I've been given all these different traditions, many of which I have not named, so I can try and figure God out. How about that part?
I am so
God's not
feeling that
God's not a
line.
Muslim.
I'm
Take
so
Wait a second.
feeling that.
What the heck
Take
is
it,
going on
take
here,
it.
Santita?
Because that's what it is. I mean, come on, get over it, everybody. Nobody has this thing completely right. Nobody.
Yeah.
But I tell you what, God has it right. And you don't kill. Thou shalt not kill. It is that simple. And the commandment is to love one another. I didn't say like, but guess what? The dirty little secret about loving people is that when you love them, you'll end up liking them, because you know what, their quirks and whatnot really will not matter to you. So we're locked into each other. The Palestinian and the Israeli are locked into each other Blacks and whites are locked into each other. That's just the way combat works, everybody.
Mhm.
Get over it.
You know, what your mom and dad said. Sorry.
I got it. No, no, say it very quickly so I can
Oh,
go.
what your mom and dad said reminds me of what Yasser Arafat said, I think in 67. You all can correct me on the history here. But he said, I come with an olive branch, and he had a gun with him. And he
Yeah,
said, don't let me drop the olive branch,
yeah.
right? Peace is possible. Peace is something that has always been wanted. Peace is available, but we have to join together, as Ronnie has said, with the people pushing the politicians. The politicians are not doing what the people want. And so the
Mhm.
people must be the ones to push the change that is needed.
And you have to understand that peace starts in your home. Many of
Mhm.
us cannot envision peace because many of us have hell in our homes.
Mm,
And so when you decide that you're going to get yourself together spiritually,
mhm,
then that will spread to the rest of the world.
mhm,
See, I want peace because I got it in my home.
mhm,
And I'm not afraid of an argument because I grew up with people who argued, but you know what? My parents did not allow us to go to bed
mhm,
angry with each other. When my brothers and my sister and I get into it, we don't let time pass.
mhm,
We don't do that because nothing is promised. But I tell you what, you're first are supposed to love each other. You're not supposed to kill each other.
mhm,
Now, come on, everybody, let's come together. All I'm saying is give peace a chance because that's really the way it's supposed to be.
mhm.
That's it. Nothing else. We're over and out, everybody. I love you. It's been a great conversation. And I'm so glad that I was at IFE, is it? You said that you are, and you got a new fan rush. And they said they enjoy watching y'all. Miss this live, but you got a new subscriber. I'm so glad, and tell everybody
It
about us.
starts with
Because
one, Santita. Starts with one.
well, that's right. And that's why we have these conversations. I'm not asking for echo chambers here.
Mhm.
Everybody's got their own experience that arcs them into their opinions. Ariel's got a body of experiences. Rania, Rush, Dr. Amar, Santita, we all do. I you do too. Robert, everybody, Brian, everybody, Wanda, everybody's been here. But we've got to be able to talk with one another and affirm one another, love one another. First, love one another. And understand that you know what? We're only going to get there together. If you want to go fast, go by yourself. If you want to go far, we got to go together. And the only way, nobody's getting to the promised land unless everybody does. That's the reality. So come on, everybody. I love you. The Santita Jackson Show, AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. May God bless you real good, however you approach God. And I hope you do. And even if you don't, that's all right with me. But I tell you what, just may God bless you real good. Traveling grace and mercies to my sister Ariel Gold, sending you so much love. And now you can tell your fellow passengers you're not going to say anything else. There you go. So they won't get upset with you. Hope you've not upset anyone politically on the train, but you know, she's calling for peace. That's a problem. AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota, Santita Jackson Show.